years, a couple of centuries, and indeed was one of the 5 major sports that the Gaelic Athletic Association wrote into their charter in 1884. And Kevin was explaining to me that in his research in the early part of the last century, sort of early 40s, that handball was, a sport that was taken up by thousands and thousands because there wasn't anything else to do. And every crossroads had its own ball alley, and that was a meeting place for people young and not so young, every Sunday in particular. It's a great game. When I was a child, we played in the old ball alley at Mallow Lake, where we passed out by it, on the road to Newport. Alley's long gone. And of course there was a great handball alley up at St Mary's Hospital, which was a full-sized alley, enclosed alley with an open roof, of course. We used to go up there on Saturdays and play. So while I might be able to pick them that cleanly on the left-hand side, I could certainly do it on the right-hand side. And we lost more half-solids and all the rest of it out the back of that place than I'll ever remember. So when you think of Mayo as a handballing county, we had some superb handballers in Block and Bella McNally from Mussport, and Martin Hennigan, and Paddy Bolingbroke, and Paddy McGee, of course, who won so many All-Irelands, and Mickey Walsh, same way, and Padraig McCormick from Newport, were all brilliant handballers, I have to say. And when you see somebody who plays handball to the scale and the style that you play here, it takes years to acquire that, and yet it looks effortless. But you put somebody who never played handball into an alley and toss a few balls at them, and you soon see what coordination, hand-to-eye, fitness, and the skill to pick a ball either side and put it where you want it, and not to leave your fists all scarred from the side of the walls if you don't know the length of your own arms. So I'd like to say that this is, I know you have, I think, 12 handball clubs registered here in Mayo. You've got quite a number of players, a couple of hundred players. It's something that I think will grow. It's a very competitive business in sport anyway, but I think it's something that's growing again in importance because of its comfort, if you like, the compactness of the courts, the way it's become an international game, and also because people are far more conscious now of fitness and their bodies and health and healthy activity. Let me just say something about that. We live in a world now where 1 billion people suffer from starvation every day. We have 1 billion people who are obese, suffer from obesity and exceptional overweight. And we have 4.5 billion people in between. And for the first time in human history, there are more problems associated with diet than with health. And that's an issue that we have to deal with. In our country here in Ireland, the next 20 years, we're looking at about 250,000 cases of diabetes coming down the line. 98% of that is preventable by activity, by good healthy exercise, and by proper diet. And I don't mean absolutely strict regime. But as you know, diabetes is a scourge. It can cause everything from blindness to amputation, and yet the vast majority of it is preventable if people only understand you've got one body for our lives, and look after it, and it's going to serve you very well indeed. So that's an issue about health and activity and exercise. And that's why it's important that we have a scheme for supporting capital infrastructure for activities in whatever sport, and handball is one of those. Another number of years ago, there was a business, Kevin, of trying to identify alleys that could be reconstructed or done up and all of that. But when you see places like Belcarra there, Tony was telling me, 500,000, brilliant facility that people, young and old, can get involved in. And when I see that young fellow down there, Matt Cody, and Seamus Clark, and all these lads, who see that market went back there from Seamus Clark's boot years ago, and no doubt he'll be up in watching the Mitchells beat Vincent's. I'd have to go to America and other business that day. You've probably heard about that in the papers, but anyway, I just want to say that I think that the one-wall game is catching on, but as time goes on, I think it's no harm for the Handball Association to integrate itself into the Gaelic Athletic Association the way it used to be. I was speaking to Liam O'Neill about this, the president of Cumandur Glasgow, and he would like actually to have an integrated sort of membership for the GAA, which would mean handball, ladies football, camogie, Gaelic football, and all of that, and handball and rounders. So if you've got your card, then you're a member of the association, and that gives you the subdivision of whatever one that you want to get involved. So I'd like to say to all of those who got the rewards here, and for those who are not present, it's a great social occasion for younger people where the competitive instinct comes in. It's an opportunity not just to win locally or at county level, but to win a national title and to go on and play international handball, represent your country. And that's a great challenge, and it's a great ambition and a great objective to have for young boys and young girls to aspire to that, and in a very competitive way to be able to compete against other countries and put on the singlet of your own country, and that's something that's very important. I'd like to say, if I may, this country's come through a very difficult time in the last 3 years. It's been hard on a lot of people. Unemployment, lack of wages, lack of job opportunities. And yet, for the first time, we are the first country in the Eurozone to come out of the bailout programme. The bailout programme, as you know, was where Ireland couldn't borrow money on the international markets because we couldn't be trusted and we weren't able to pay anything back. So you had to get loans of other countries, the European Central Bank, the European Commission and the IMF. And that meant that they came here every quarter for the last 3 years and they inspected how you were running the country. And if you didn't measure up to the conditions that were set for the money that was borrowed, they wouldn't pay, which means that you'd default, which means you'd be even in a worse position than you were before. So we exited that programme in last December. And people then said, well, what's the next step? So what we've done is set out the steps on the next 7 years, up to 2020, with our growth projections, job projections, how you're going to open the doors for business, access to credit for banks, so that people can get back into employment and start their companies and so on. Now today, for instance, we opened the Intro office in David House in Castlegar. That means that they pulled all of the different sectors together: the community welfare services, the social welfare office, and the HSE, people who are working in the community area there. They're all now in one office. So instead of having just a list of people who are on the live register, who are drawing dole as it used to be called, they now see these as a list of people with experience, with competence, with ambition. They're called together in groups and individual and so on like that. So what would you like to do? What did you do before? What do you want to do? We engage with employers to say, can you take on one more? Can you take on two? If every small business in the country took on just one person, you'd practically eliminate your unemployment problem overnight. There's a lot of state assistance there in different schemes, and the challenge is to get people to understand what they are. So that's all changing from what used to be there. Rather than just having a list of where people need to sign on with one of money, it's now a different prospect entirely, because they want to have everybody make a contribution to the country. So we've set out those steps for the time ahead. I expect this year to be 50,000 new jobs created, and again next year. And that's going to be important as we measure up to the competition from other countries. Just like we play handball for Ireland against other countries, so too do our young people have to measure up against their peers around the world. So for all of the young people in primary and secondary school, and you think that in the next 10 to 15 years, they're going to be the drivers of business and the drivers of employment and all of the sectors that make our economy work. With an ageing population generally, we're going to have serious problems up ahead in the next 40 years about pensions and the costs of all of these, because people, thanks be to God, will live longer because of all the changes that have been made and the new health innovations that are taking place. But they are the big challenges. But we see this year and next year and the year after, ones where we're going to have further growth in our economy and confidence beginning to return. This year, for instance, we're bringing a new scheme for rebates in respect of reconstructions of the house, the back kitchen, the patio, refits for energy, all these things. People can claim back an element of those costs from the revenue commissioners once the contractor is a registered contractor. That's going to give rise to a lot of employment, small jobs, here, there, and everywhere around the country. Remember, there are 100,000 people on the live register who were involved in the construction sector previously. So that's where we are. And enough of that story. So again, goes to you, thank you, and for the handball clubs, Kevin, for all that you do, and for all that are involved in what is a great sport. When I was 10, I played in an All-Ireland final in handball. It was an old wind ball we had, you know those wind balls? And the All-Ireland final was played over at Cornwall School, in the National School of Ireland School myself. And the facilities weren't great, and it was kind of a one-wall job really. And the old wall was pepper dashed. And depending on where this wind ball would hit, it might not come out where you wanted it to come out. It was even worse though, because the ground on which you played was kind of, you know, covered in sort of gravel and bits of stone sticking up in it. And I think the game was 1920. And the ball was tossed out of here by Mr. Collins, and it hopped on a stone and I missed it completely. And to this day, even though I might be the teacher, I regret that very much. Every time I meet him, I remind him that he won that medal by default. Anyway, look, good luck to you all. And to those who play the game, particularly, if I may say, those who give example in senior years, because this is a game that you can play right up into your very senior years, and that's a great thing. I'll just say this to you. I met Ronnie Delaney recently. He won the Olympic 1500 metres in 1956 in Melbourne, the first Irish athlete to win an Olympic title at a distance like that. And he said to me recently, and he's an elderly man now, a senior citizen, he said it's all about flexibility, being able to keep moving and keep active and keep stretching. And that's great for people preventing accidents and preventing, you know, ailments that might occur that might cause them to, you know, have a bit of hospital or whatever. So handball is a really good test of your own flexibility, of your body, good for mental strength, it's good for your health. Get out there, work up a good bit of energy, have a decent shower after it, and you feel a new person. And whether you're young and challenging for competitive sport, or whether you're not so young and you're enjoying the social interaction with your peers, that's life. And life is an adventure, and you're living it. Thank you, Gus, to you all here this evening. Congratulate you. Thank you for what you do, for working for yourselves, but you're also sending an image both of the game of handball and of our country, and that's something that we should be very proud of and never lose that. God bless you all.